The next person wishing to speak is Mr. George Walton. He wants to also speak about the Hancock Wood franchise and letter request from the Findlay City Council. Mr. Walton, and you better off, and you know the 4 minutes.
Absolutely. I will be very brief. First, I want to thank each and every one of the City Council members for at least allowing me to come in and at least state my issue in front of you for your consideration. Secondly, I want to clarify a couple of points. The AEP negotiations, that was initiated by AEP. What I was instructed to do was to put a proposal together. I have a copy of the letter that Dave, you can put out, and I also have a text to show that communications from AEP's representative, Randy Payne. I put it together. It was given to Randy tonight of your last council meeting. Randy sent a text and said that it was going to be reviewed by their executive management people in Columbus, and they would give me, a call the next day. That call occurred. What came out of that call is that there was AEP did not want to put a written agreement in place. They were open to the territorial swaps, but they didn't like the proposal that I put in place. What we had asked for in the proposal was additional acreage to justify the value of the land that we were giving up, which is where Campbell's Soup and Romark, some of the other loads, had located. What AEP had offered was land over in North Baltimore that I think everyone in this room knows is not equal to the piece of commercial and industrial site that AEP has been serving companies. Also, Randy shared with me that there's some type of a PAT manufacturing or warehouse type facility that AEP has been working with already to locate in that piece of territory. And I want to close by this. I am a very honest person. I will not lie. I will give you the facts. It's up to the council to decide tonight on our proposed letter and resolution. The last piece is that our members, when I say that this will impact rates, it will. Because our members have enjoyed the stability of rates due to the commercial load that we've served on the east side of Findlay and surrounding areas. That is our commercial base. Outside of the city of Findlay, we have equity meats, we have growth systems, and we have the Mars dog food plant. And by the way, Mars dog food plant was a territorial swap. I'm sorry, let me back up. Protec was a territorial swap with AEP. We got more acreage from that because that is about a 30 megawatt load. It was a pretty significant load for AEP. It was before my time. We have the paperwork to show the swap. And we ended up getting the community college where Owens was currently at, along with some land on Road 5, which was pretty worthless from a development standpoint. So basically, we swapped a 30 megawatt load for an Owens Community College, which was about less than 2 megawatts. So any questions? I'm done.
Any questions of Ms. Frischie?
I have a couple, George. To clarify the negotiation with AEP that didn't end up coming to fruition, there's a discussion about the 1-to-2 ratio. Clarify, with your negotiations, was it just for Campbell's Soup to fix, or was there more properties? Is that where you're talking about the pet manufacturing?
There was more properties. What Randy and I also had my Vice President of Engineering Operations with me when we negotiated at Cracker Barrel. It was Romark, territorial swap for Romark, and also Campbell's Soup, and for the future loads that Randy had indicated, and he only indicated one. It was some type of a PAT warehouse or manufacturing facility that he felt that was going to locate in that same area, and basically for the rest of the land that was there. What I proposed, and even when I gave the proposal, I told Randy up front over the telephone, and also here at the council meeting, the last council meeting that you guys were at, that this is our proposal. I'm open for negotiations. What came back was that AEP would not put anything in writing. They were only interested in a territorial swap, but the most they would go was a one-on-one. And I talked to Randy. Randy's a good guy, and I'm not going to ever put Randy down. It was their executive management that made that call. What Randy shared with me is that they felt that there's potential in North Baltimore. I mean, let's be serious. You're not going to have the potential in North Baltimore. And I also have a map that I can pass around and actually show you the territory that we were getting in North Baltimore. There's no comparison to an industrial site in the city of Findlay. That's what the proposal was about. And I told Randy, I said, if that's the best that your management will do, I said, then there's nothing more I can do as a part of this negotiations process. And that's where it ended.
Anything further? Ms. Rishi?
And then on the Protect swap, you said it was more than a 1-to-1 ratio, but you were talking wattage, but it's basically similar to what this offer was.
There was more acreage.
Okay, and then this pet manufacturing would be in Hancock Woods territory?
And that's on that same site where Campbell's Soup, that general area within Hancock Woods service area inside of Findlay.
And just curious, were you also negotiating with them? Were you made aware that there's a potential load coming into your area?
No. And in fact, Hancock Wood has been left completely out of the Alliance Group, even when we pay dues just like all the other members. I can't and I won't disclose my contacts within the city that shared that with me because of confidentiality. But I will tell you that the Campbell suit, there was a meeting that came from Randy to me back in October of last year. I did not even know there was a Campbell suit being looked at. And that's not the way it used to be in the city of Findlay. It used to be when there was a load in Hancock Woods service area, I would be contacted personally. And we would sometime meet at the country club and sit down with the customer. Other times it was more, can you give me a proposal for cost to serve this facility at this site? And I would get a demand. You know, they're going to have a 50 kW demand, for example. And we would turn that over within a couple hours and get it back to the Alliance Group. I don't know what's going on. I'll be honest with you. All I know is that we're being left out of it. And I actually called Campbell. When I found out about Campbell Soup was when it was in the newspaper. And I called Randy. And I said, hey, what's going on here? I said, that area, and I actually got a map of the territory where the building was going to be located. That's how I found out that 75%, it's not 50%. Now what AEP is trying to use is that there's an expansion that's coming down the road. Today, 75% of that is in Hancock Woods service area. And again, the only reason that I bring this before you, it's not, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not a for-profit entity. So there's not huge profits, but we did a damn good job of maintaining our rates. We are competitive. You guys received letters from commercial accounts in Findlay that showed that we are very well supported by our commercial base in Findlay. I could take it if we were not going to be able to grow moving forward because our rates weren't competitive and that type of thing. That's not the case here, and that's hard for me to swallow.
Mr. Wobser.
Mr. Walton, thank you for coming again and spending another evening with us. Are you going to be staying for the rest of the meeting
Yes.
when we debate this legislation?
Yes.
Thank you. Going back to your comments just a second ago when you were talking about at some point in time you stopped being notified of new business coming into Findlay and your ability to service those potential new customers. When did this start?
It was right before Romart. And let me put it straight. When we started meeting with Romart, that was sent to us then. our engineering group was working on a plan of service, and we had put a plan of service out there to Dwayne. And because it was so far from our existing lines, we were a little bit higher than AP. They were right there. It was right on the line. And I can tell you, this is not a competitive issue. There's plenty of times AP has did the same thing, where they had to run I think we had 2 spans of primary that we had to run to get to this customer. And that was all negotiable. We did that before. We weren't going to lose a load or run a load from the city of Findlay. But by the time that we heard nothing after it was submitted. And AEP was working behind the scenes to meet with this customer and say, hey, we're serving your other building over in Tall Timbers. We can serve this. And they utilized their muni-wide franchise to take it. That's how they got it.
So it was not long. So you knew about Romark, but after that, you've not heard about any of these coming to town.
Nothing.
So that would have been mid 2000 and
probably 15. And even this PAT thing, AP is working. And I'm going to say this, but I can't reveal the sources. But I was told that any time that there's a potential commercial count coming into Findlay, it goes right to AEP. And it was from a reliable source.
So it's your thoughts then that somewhere in the alliance that there are people who are not giving you a fair shot.
Absolutely.
In your letter that Ms. Bishop read to us a couple of minutes ago, you mentioned in there that the multi-state companies that utilize their financial resources to feed money into small municipalities with hope of gaining special treatment. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes. And I would, I know the media is here, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, so I'm going to talk very generically. And that is, we know, because it was told to us by someone in the Alliance Group, that there was a contribution of $100,000 made to that group.
To the Alliance.
To the Alliance Group. And it was stipulated right to one of my board members who's here tonight. And, you know, we're nonprofit. We can't afford that. We gave, just to give you an example, Jeff, we gave $25,000 to the Marathon Performing Arts Center as a donation. We're doing the best that we can for our size. And it shouldn't be that a nonprofit electric co-op, who has did a very good job inside the city of Findlay, should just be walked over like this. And more importantly, we've got commercial accounts which are your citizens. We've got Lakeview we serve. We've got Brookstone. All of those are citizens of Findlay. And whether you believe me or not, if our commercial base is in Findlay, and we're not growing inside of Findlay when we only have a small area left compared to AEP, that is going to impact our rates. With an electric co-op, I want to share this with you. There's 2 ways to capitalize an electric co-op, a nonprofit business. One is through debt, and the other is through equity. Equity comes from the rates. And you just can't go and get debt. That's something I manage, that the board has charged me with managing. And we are financially stable because I've managed it. But you've got to have growth. And if that growth is taken from us for the limited area that we have left in Findlay, we're not going to hurt AEP for the small amount of area that we've got left in the city of Findlay. But it sure would help our members and our commercial accounts here inside of Findlay to stabilize rates.
For myself, I can say that we certainly appreciate what Hancock Wood has done for the city, your donations to the different causes that you are involved in. So it's your theory, I guess, that the money that AEP has paid to the Alliance in a donation of some sort has bought them special favors.
Yes, that is my opinion.
Thank you. I've got additional questions, but I'll save them for the time when we debate the legislation.
Watson.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Walton. I guess my question is just to review for people watching and kind of this whole issue. Can you talk about stranded investments and infrastructure and how that directly impacts residential customers? Because I think people sometimes,
Yes.
there's a disconnect and they don't realize that when you put
Very good
investments
question.
out.
Dave, can you pass that out? As I'm talking, what's coming to you is the amount of investment that we have made over in the city of Findlay. And it's about 23.6 million, and I've got it itemized as to where those dollars have been invested. Those investments, and for any distribution utility company, not just Hancock Wood, when we make those investments, because we had a franchise that has supported us for all the past years, over 30-some years, until when we lost the Romark load. When we make those investments, we don't build capacity for just those commercial loads today. That would be crazy to do that. We make additional investments into that capacity so that we can serve future loads. That's just common sense. Well, that investment is in those distribution lines, the substations, as you see on that page, to support the city of Findlay. Think with us realizing that with our territorial franchise, like it's always worked, that franchise would support those investments so that if new loads, commercial accounts came within our service area, then we've got the capacity that we've made those investments in to support the new growth. And we have supported Findlay with the new growth, especially on the east side of Findlay. Now, stranded investment. Where the stranded investment comes in is that we have made those investments with a combination of debt, a lot of it with debt, 50% of it with debt. Our equity ratio is about 51%. That means we've got 51% in equity. We've got the remainder in debt that we've drawn. And we are paying the debt service along with the depreciation of that plant every year. And so if we can't grow in our service territory, those lines and that capacity are sitting there that can't be used, the additional capacity that we've built into the lines, while AEP comes in, for example, and pulls a load like Campbell Soup. Let me put it in perspective. A Campbell Soup load, as we have some very similar, like our Home Depot distribution, some of these loads are 500,000 kilowatt hours per month. Okay, compare it to a residential customer who's using on the average about 1,200 kilowatt hours a month, times 12. So you can see if the commercial load stops, and this is our base in Findlay. We have spot loads like I previously indicated. Without that commercial growth, then all of a sudden it forces the utility company to raise rates. It's very simple. Debt and equity, which do you pick? If you do too much debt, you get yourself in trouble. We have banks and covenant agreements that we have to maintain every year that are looked at by our banks. So if we're not allowed to grow and pick up, the Campbell Soups here or the Romark there, then all of a sudden I've got to resort to increasing rates to generate enough operating revenue to support all of our fixed costs and other operating costs. It's real simple.
Mr. Hellman.
Thank you. I'm delighted that you're here, Mr. Walton.
Thank you.
And thank you for the information that you've provided. Could it have been that the client would have requested bids from AEP because they only wanted to deal with AEP, or they deal with AEP throughout Ohio? I guess let me preface this by saying I'm disappointed in your comment about what you've said about
Mr. Hellman, would you pull your mic?
About the alliance not bringing this prospect to you, Campbell Soup. And it leads me to ask the question, could Campbell Soup have said, we'd prefer to deal with AEP and we deal with them on all our other plants and you don't need to shop it? I mean, I guess I'm disappointed that they didn't.
Okay, let me share this with you, Dennis. To answer your question, yes, that could be the case. But you got to also realize that AEP is a big company, and they're out there meeting with these accounts on a national basis, and they're selling themselves to these accounts. But let me also back up for a minute. In the state legislature back in 2000, the state legislature deemed that what was competitive was the wholesale, the generation portion of the bill, which is about 50-some% of the bill, no matter what utility you're at. That was the only part that was made competitive. They looked at the distribution part of it, which is the lines and the wires and the substations. The reason why the state legislature, after they did the review on it, didn't make the wires part of the business competitive, because they know utilities have to make those investments years back. Mm-hmm. Because if a Campbell Soup came in and I only built enough capacity into my lines just for the existing base that we have here, then there's no way, if they wanted a service by the end of the year, there would be no way that we could build that even into our rate base. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the state decided not to make the distribution part competitive. And it would be very difficult. We built those distribution facilities with the premise that we've got a territorial franchise for years that has supported those investments. Now, here's how Hancock Wood and my board feels. We've made those investments. We've supported Findlay. We've supported the commercial base. And we're competitive. And now the rug is being pulled from up under us because those investments have been made, the debt service is already in place, and now we're getting loads that could help support those investments pull from us. Now, if this had been going on for years and years, I would have taken a different perspective. I would have looked at those investments and said, wait a minute, and I'd have talked to my board and said, hey, we're going to have to limit how much we're investing into the city of Findlay, because there's no guarantees that we're going to get the next load that comes in our service territory. That wasn't the case for years. You know, when that territorial franchise was first granted, it wasn't by this council, it's by councils before. The intent of it was, from the beginning, was so that Hancock Wood could only serve in its territory inside the city of Findlay. And those rules changed if AEP is allowed to continue to do what they're doing. And we, Hancock Wood, ends up having to raise rates on its members, and that's the truth. The only way you capitalize the business for electric, nonprofit, electric co-op is through debt and equity. That's it.
I understand. Mr. Schindler, do you have a question?
George,
Yes.
there's no question with the past history of the last 3 or 4 years that our economic development arm of the alliance has been quite successful. Regardless of a $100,000 contribution that AEP may or may not have made, it strikes me as rather a conflict of interest, and maybe we and you more aggressively have to be talking to them.
To answer that, I plan on it. I plan on going to the board. But first things first, it makes no sense, to go to them today if we can't grow. If without this proposal that I've got before the council, if I'm not allowed to grow, then it's useless to even go to the alliance and say, hey, include me. It's my process was this, John, was to first bring this to the council to try to get our franchise like it used to be. I'm not asking for anything more than the way our franchise used to operate. 2, then I want to sit down with the Alliance board. I know some of the guys on that board. And then talk to them about why we're not being included. Because we're not, we're not an entity that's hurting. And that's, even no matter how you guys vote tonight, I want to get one thing through. We are not hurting the city of Findlay. We are doing more help with the city of Findlay. And you saw that in some. I could get you more of those letters from commercial accounts. But we have did a great job, here inside the city of Findlay. And I know time does not permit for me to go over other investments we've made in the city of Findlay, in charitable donations, helping people inside the city. I could give you 2-3 pages of them. We do the best for our size that we can possibly do. And again, our rates are competitive. This is what's so hard for me, John. It's hard for me to stand here and say, okay, a big multi-state operation can come in and just take the big loads. when my rates aren't, and there's been no proof that my rates aren't competitive for Hancock Wood, that's hard to take for any business, not just our electric co-op.
Are there any other, Mr. Russell?
Mr. Walton, thanks for coming in. A couple of questions. Who has a McLean load?
AEP.
Okay. Why when McLean happened, weren't we having this discussion?
They were in AEP service territory.
Is an AEP service territory is a citywide franchise, correct?
It's a citywide franchise that has been operated like it follows the territorial law. It's always operated that way up until the Romark load.
But the Romark and Campbell's is within the city limits, correct?
Yes.
So then it's within AEP's territory.
It depends on how you look at it. It's within the city limits, yes.
Okay.
It's under the muni-wide franchise, yes. But the way the two franchises with overlapping franchises and the intent of the council who issued those originally was for Hancock Wood, which we did for years, 30-some years to share the proof of that, have operated within their territory. AEP never went over into our territory over that time frame.
When you were talking to us about Romark at the conclusion of that, council, I thought, made it pretty clear that, and you expressed your desire to go bring this in front of the Public Utilities Commission. And I think that's also the body that looks at things like stranded costs for relief. And so I'm wondering why, after last year, did this conversation not end up at the Public Utilities Commission? And in fact, you and I had a conversation, and you asked me if I would come down and speak on behalf of my view of what happened here, and I agreed with you, and I never heard about it again. But so what happened from what? Take me through what happened
Sure.
after last year and why that didn't happen.
I can explain. When we received that letter, up till that letter, we had nothing. When we received that letter, I had the letter evaluated by our General Counsel in Columbus. And it was Buckeye's General Counsel who was representing us. What came of that was that it's not strong enough because it wasn't endorsed, it wasn't a resolution, it was just a letter. It didn't mean anything. And it wasn't even voted on by the council. And what the attorneys, when you take something to the commission, it's expensive. It's not cheap. And we had nothing based on, I'm not an attorney, but this is what came back from the General Counsel in Columbus, is that, George, the administrative judge at the PUCO is going to want to know what is the intent officially, what is the official intent of the City Council of Findlay. If the intent of the City Council in Findlay is to create competition between the two utilities on the distribution side, then there's no sense of us even taking it. If the City Council wants, as the letter stipulated, wants the two utilities operate like they've always operated in past years, and if there are territorial swaps, if there's some, like one utility wanting to serve over in another utility service territory, then they should utilize the territorial swaps like they did for 30-some years. And I've got a whole stack of them where that has occurred. That don't occur anymore. AEP just goes and takes it. I don't even get a call to even sit down and say, hey, George, do you want to swap some land, territory? That does not happen. It used to. That's why it dropped, because we didn't have enough to take it to the PUCO for them to even consider it, because they're going to go right back. If I showed them that letter, this is coming from the attorneys, if I showed them that letter, they're going to say, well, that's not an official letter of the council. It's not a resolution. And so the only reason why I came back to this council to ask for a resolution or a vote on that letter is so we had something stronger, so that I could take that and go through the PUCO and fight it out between the two utilities and keep the council out of it.
Anything further? Ms. Frishy?
I have a couple questions, George, on regards, just follow up from Grant, with regards to territory, with regards to muni franchise versus territorial. So even though there's a territorial franchise, everybody has territorial lines with a PUCO.
Right.
So how old, first, I guess my first question is, how old are the maps? How often do those once those lines are set, is that what they are for life? Okay.
Well,
Other than when we make changes?
When we do swaps, and then that's a process in itself. It's initiated by the utility that is wanting the swap, and that is wanting the other utility to serve their territory. We have a form that we fill out. It goes down to the commission. Commission reviews it. It's a formality. Commission reviews it. They change the territorial lines on the territorial map. They send a notification back to both utilities that now, from this point forward, this is Hancock Woods territory or AEP's territory.
So part two to that question, I think there's a little confusion with regards to a muni franchise compared to a territorial. So my question would be, AEP's territory, if they did not have a muni franchise and they had a territorial franchise like you, would the entire city of Findlay be their territory still? Or is the original map from whatever year that is originally all AEP, and then we've had overlapping gray areas since then?
Yes, that would be it. If the territorial map rules, if you gave AEP a territorial franchise, then AEP would follow the territorial law, which is the map that was identified by that same ones. And then as you annex out into the city, and this is another big issue for Hancock Wood, even more important than losing the Campbell suit, because as you annex out into Hancock Wood's service area, then AEP can bring their reach even further out into our service area.
One more question then on the muni franchise. What is the benefit of a muni franchise these days, or what's the benefit of that over a territorial franchise to be able to have a municipal franchise?
Well, let me explain to you. Maybe this is a better way of answering that. When we received our territorial franchise, AP had a muni-wide franchise. When the council ruled on this, back in the day that we got the original territorial franchise, what the council stipulated was that we will give Hancock Wood, and this is not just Hancock Wood, this is throughout the state. Every electric co-op in the state has a territorial franchise. We will give them that territorial franchise that will follow the territorial lines, and the investor-owned utility would also stay within their territorial lines. And if you don't believe me, look at what's happened over the last 30 years. That's exactly what's happened. And when there was one utility wanted someone's territory, they negotiated and they did swaps. That stopped. And Dave, if you will pass that one sheet out for the CFC sheet, you will see last year, Holmes Wayne Electric Co-op, AEP, did the same thing. You can read it for yourself. I won't take up the council's time on that. But this time, the electric co-op won. The council's in the village or city of Wooster. In that case, the city council looked at it and said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to go over into electric co-op's territory when this has been operating like this for years. And they got rolled down, AEP did. And what they tried to do in there, so you got to really understand what it's saying. They tried to change the electric co-op's franchise to a muni-wide franchise, so that it was Dayton Power and Light, I believe it was, and AEP could then cherry pick inside of the cooperative's territory. And the city council for Holmes Wayne and Wooster ruled against it and said, no, you're not going to do that. You know, you've been operating like this for years. Why are you trying to go and pick a load here and there?
Any other, Mr. Hellman?
One last thing, from my standpoint, this went from a letter a couple of weeks ago that explained city's position, city council's position, to a full-blown ordinance that we're looking at here this evening. How did that come about and why?
I'm going to give you my take on it. I don't know. I didn't initiate that originally, but I want to say this, Dennis. The franchise language that we had proposed last year is what Hancock Wood wanted from the beginning. We only accepted the letter, and I went to Ron and different council members and requested for the letter because that was our only out. If we don't get the letter, or we don't get the franchise language like we had proposed, there's nothing, back to Grant's question, there is not one thing I can do at the PUCO, not one thing. We just let AEP continue to pick off our loads. So to answer your question, be very clear, it's the franchise language that we really want. But the council has, been split on it as to whether they would grant Hancock Wood the language under that franchise. And again, I go back to my original comment, Dennis. What have we did so bad inside the city of Findlay that we can't continue to operate like we've operated for 30-some years?
Well, I don't think anybody feels like you've done anything bad or poorly. I mean, I'm a client and a customer. I sit on the Alliance board as well. I've never heard some of these comments and issues that you brought up.
And I will tell you who the person is, but I won't say it in council meeting.
And I guess based on some of that, it would be my preference if we ended up tabling this thing and taking it to the committee of the whole, because there's some things here that I don't understand and don't agree with. And I don't know whether you would be amenable to that or not, but I think this deserves broader discussion than what we're able to conduct here.
The only comment, Dennis, that I would refer to with that is I think we still need both. And that's why I started the process of bringing this to the council to address A, the franchise first, and then B, and I shared this with my board, and I said I need to meet with the Alliance board second to address why, when we're paying our money just like any other member of the Alliance group, why are we being left out?
I will make that request directly to the Alliance board at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Anything further, Ms. Frishy?
I just want to comment on Dennis's statement. I don't know if it's the right time or not, but while we're on topic, the ordinance came about from myself and Jeff Whoops are making a request for that ordinance to come back from last year.
Okay.
And the reason being, when we were made aware, certain council members were contacted that the Campbell's soup load had taken place. Since we sent that letter a year ago, almost to the date, I think it was May of 16 sometime, the letter said that 9 members of council supported that letter to be sent to both AEP and Hancock Wood, and it said, play nice, or if you don't play nice, we are willing to readdress, since we kicked the can down the road a year ago. So to me, it was standing behind our word as a council person to readdress it. Part 2 of it is it's not just for what Hancock Wood wants, but as a council person, I felt very strongly that for economic development, because we talk about that a lot, we have customers commercial wise that are on Hancock Wood's lines, and we need to consider not only the new customer coming in and letting them choose or potentially choose who they have for their servicer, but we need to also consider the business that we brought to our community to make us great, that we keep their loads down too, because otherwise we're going to be causing not only residential but commercial hardship to those customers, and those business customers, to me, are going to feel not important in the community. So for economic development, I think this ordinance, since we discussed it a year ago, and it was Don Rasmussen, your legal team, and I believe AEP's legal team came up with the verbiage for this ordinance that we did not pass last year for some reason, but we did send a letter stating our opinion, and for that reason, we need to, in my view, pass this ordinance tonight for the betterment of the community inside the city and in the county.
And I might add just one final comment. I stand here tonight also representing our residential members here in Findlay. I know that you have some here that are on fixed incomes. And we have did our best, believe me, in trying to maintain stable rates. And we have. And I can tell you with some of the commercial accounts, of course, because of privacy, I can't tell you who. We have accounts, big commercial accounts here in Findlay, that their average rate per kilowatt hour is about 8 cents. AP can't touch it. And just to give you that little tidbit to show you that we work very hard, we're lean, and don't forget about the service part of it. We are spending millions of dollars as we speak in the city of Findlay, putting SCADA systems in and distribution automations so that, and I'll just state this real quickly, so that, Dennis, if I lose service to your home out of the substation you're fed off of, without sending a crew out and say I lose the transmission into that substation, from my home through an iPad or computer, I can swap you around to a different one of the substations you see on that page. AP doesn't even have that capability. We're investing in that because we're nonprofit. We're all about service and competitive rates.
I've never lost power since I've been there. Thank you. Hopefully they're still on when I get home.
I have a comment.
Mr. Smelser.
I just want to make a clarification. The word city kind of gets used. I think that's in reference, George, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's in reference to the boundary of the city of Findlay. There has been no representation from the administration or, to my knowledge, anyone on my staff or the mayor's staff or council that has provided preferential treatment to anyone. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. One more. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to have a comment till Paul's comment, and I'm going to beg to differ on that since we had you say that on the record once already, Paul, that there was no documentation. And then you have sent 2 letters to council stating that there is. Our council secretary even was going to email me those documents that I've made public record requests for twice. So I'm going to beg to differ on that, whether it's signed or not. There was communication of some kind. And I also heard it from some board meetings as well, that there was a letter discussed. So I just want to put that on the record.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then, because if you are implying that I'm being disingenuous, I feel the need to respond.
Go ahead.
The letter that was referred to regarding city's preference for AEP over Hancock Wood did not exist. It does not exist to my knowledge. It may have been proposed and written from Campbell's to AEP, but there was no letter. There was no representation from the administration or, again, anyone that works for us, to my knowledge, that would have implied that AEP would be preferred or that any preferential treatment was given. End of story. And that's why when you ask for public records, there are none, because it does not exist.
I'll again beg to differ when you state that there was conversation. So I think this is a discussion for another time, but we will beg to differ on that.
Okay, so noted. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify the record as well, is that the language in the ordinance is not my language. It is purely Hancock Wood Electric's language that was submitted to us. I just put it into the form of the ordinance.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify the record as well, is that the language in the ordinance is not my language. It is purely Hancock Wood Electric's language that was submitted to us. I just put it into the form of the ordinance.
Okay, we need to move on.
Well, I just have a question for Don,
Go ahead.
please. Did you review that document as our legal counsel, and is that okay with you, Don? Or are you saying that that documentation is the change to the franchise is not okay with you as the law director?
The language is their language. That's what they requested, and that's what you requested me to reintroduce. I never introduced that language.
So you, as our law director, communicating to council, is that a legal change that is allowable, or is it not?
It's what they're requesting so that they can probably go to PUCO to get a decision.
Is it
Correct,
okay.
Mr. Walton?
It does two things. That is correct. And it also allows us to be able to serve in our territory like we've served 30 years prior to that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walton.
Thank you. Thank each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Reports of municipal officers and municipal